All right, Andrew, so we can start now.
Hi, how you doing?
Okay. So good afternoon, listeners. It's 1:30 and it's time for the Tech Talk Show with Kazim this afternoon. And this afternoon on the show, we're going to be discussing extending your intranet into Microsoft Teams. And I've got someone on the show with me this afternoon to help us respond to most of the questions that we have today. He's an 8-time Microsoft MVP. He has authored a number of books as well. He's one of the instructors on the LinkedIn Learning website. You're very much welcome on the show, Andrew.
Thank you, Kazim. No, it's great to help you out here, and
Okay.
anytime. Thank you.
Okay. I'm sure I probably missed out, a few things about you. So I'm just going to allow you quickly introduce yourself before we proceed.
All right, thank you for that. So yes, I'm a 8-time MVP based in UK, in the north of the UK, and I've been a Microsoft certified trainer like Kazim for about 15 years. So I've taught many people, helped them through certifications, and I've written a bunch of courses that are now on LinkedIn Learning. I spend my time split between working with LinkedIn Learning on new courses and teaching people, but also I have a new role which takes me part-time for Microsoft, and that has changed my outlook on things completely. And I'm really excited to be working with Azure more, which seems to be a very popular and upcoming topic.
Okay, that's very nice, Andrew. So without any delay, we're just going to jump into the business of the day. So Andrew, what is your definition of a modern intranet? How do you define one, a modern intranet? And if we can set one up, what Microsoft tool do you think we can use to do it?
So yeah, intranet is a strange thing, because when I was young, intranets were the rage, and this is a website that is for internal consumption. So like your staff or maybe your suppliers, it's like a private space where you can put information for that customer audience. The modern intranet is still the same. It's still a private space. It's still, for invited people only. That could be staff, it could be suppliers, it could be a certain community group. And I think the simple answer to your question of what tool would I recommend would always be SharePoint Online. So
Okay.
that's the online version of SharePoint. It's ready-made, it's out of the box, it works, you don't have to do too much configuration, and it's a hosted platform in the cloud that you can put all your data. You can customize it if you're that way inclined, or you can just leave it as is and start to use it as a document library.
Okay. So Andrew, what are those features that one would expect from a corporate intranet? So those functionalities that one would look out for. So you've mentioned SharePoint, for example. So what are those features that SharePoint has that makes it a good fit, for a corporate intranet?
So SharePoint is a dedicated tool for hosting information. That could be documents, it could be video, it could be list, it could be spreadsheet. So SharePoint is purpose built to be an intranet. That's what it's there for. So it's nothing else. Okay. Other qualities of SharePoint Online are it's software as a service. So you're actually just buying from Microsoft that platform where you've got, that they've pre-built the intranet for you, and you're accessing it. You don't have to look at the maintenance. You don't have to look at the adding more servers to make it expand and get bigger and bigger, which used to be a problem. If you did it on site, you can use SharePoint on site, but nobody really uses SharePoint on site anymore. So SharePoint Online is scalable. It'll also expand to whatever you need to do. You can customize it. It's secure because it's stored in a Microsoft cloud environment. So whatever's stored in that cloud is encrypted. And whenever you transfer data to and from, so for example, if you load documents from your desktop, that could be any desktop, it could be a PC, a Mac, a phone, to the SharePoint, that is encrypted as well in transit. Yeah. And I think the final piece I'd say about SharePoint is, it comes bundled with so many licenses now. So, we'll talk about Microsoft 365 or Office 365, so it's accessible, and if I could draw you a picture, what we'd see is intranets were really popular for like 10, 15, 20 years ago, and then they disappeared. They became stagnant, and that's not actually they disappeared completely, but they didn't get any work done to them. That they were hard, they just stagnated, and that was probably because nobody updated them. And we've seen a resurgence in the ability for companies to host data and all their information on an intranet because of SharePoint Online, because of Office 365.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that answer, Andrew. So now let's quickly talk about Teams. I'm not sure there's anyone out there who is alien to Teams, but I wouldn't like us to assume now. So Andrew, can you help us define what Teams is? Microsoft Teams. What is Microsoft Teams?
Yeah, so Microsoft Teams, it is an interesting concept, actually. Microsoft Teams is, you can almost think of it as it's a killer app. And what I mean by that is it is so new and it's so radical in what it does. It is revolutionary, and it's only been around for about 2 years. But what happens is Microsoft Teams is your communication, collaboration, and data storage nerve center for a company. Most people just think of Teams as a replacement for Skype, or just purely to make phone calls or do what we're doing now, where we do webinars or talks. But actually, it's so much more than that. And that's it. For the people in the audience who've not really used it or not really appreciated it in full, once you have it open 24/7, or all the time that you've got your computer on, it's open in the background, and you're using it to store your documents, to chat to people, to make calls, you're booking meetings through Teams, it becomes all encompassing. Everything goes on through Teams. And it is radical. 2 years ago, I ignored Teams. It wasn't until about a year ago that I started to use Teams. And certainly since I've joined Microsoft, everything they do, meeting wise, collaboration wise, and chat, all happens in Teams. And you become almost email becomes secondary, and I mean that. Whereas Kazim, you know as well as I do, email is or has been the #1 app. We live our lives in Outlook. If you're not a business person or you're not working yet, you live your lives on social media. Business people live their lives in email, and that's transitioning towards Teams. It really is. So that email becomes secondary to that. Then email becomes a formal way of doing communication, whereas Teams becomes a project-based platform. You use. You'll create a team and pull people into that team who are going to work on a common aim. And you can split that down into channels to fine tune it, and you can have private channels. You can put people just into one channel. You can invite external people, and behind a team you have this SharePoint. So this is why SharePoint has become it's ascending again. It's getting more important because Teams sits in front of SharePoint, and therefore all your documents that you store in Teams actually get stored in SharePoint behind the scenes.
Okay, I was going to get to that, Andrew. Yes, exactly. Earlier on, you've mentioned SharePoint, and you mentioned some of the features, that we need to look out for to make an intranet happen. And we've looked at Teams now. So, there seems to be this overlap now between Microsoft Teams and SharePoint. In the past, things that we're used to doing with SharePoint, the collaboration, document sharing. So all of these things now are made possible within Teams. So can you help us understand this better, Andrew? What is the difference, between Teams now and SharePoint?
Okay, yeah, sure. So if you can think of Teams as being the front end, as being the everyday accessible platform that you will use. Literally, you'll open it it'll be there on your desktop, and it's just sat there in the background, or you're using it for communication. Very, 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 very few people will go into SharePoint now.
Yeah.
Okay, you've got a link within Teams to go into SharePoint, and you can see all your files and your structure and all the information, and obviously the SharePoint. And obviously the intranet aspect of all your standing data that might not change that often. But yeah, I use SharePoint for every hour that I spend in Teams. I will probably only use 10-15 minutes in SharePoint, and that is mainly if I want to create a shareable link to a document, or to check a document out so I can edit it within SharePoint. So SharePoint sits behind Teams. Teams is your front end, and really using SharePoint as your document library, or your repository for all your security and file handling and checking it out. And obviously you still got your intranet aspect of that, but Teams is just a live interpretation of your collaboration and your project management.
Okay. So how about Skype for Business, Andrew? We know back then with O365, we used to have the Skype for Business, and now we're having Teams.
Yeah.
So what is the difference for those who doesn't know? And for the customers as well, or for some of the users who already have the on-prem version of Skype for Business, can this synergy between the on-prem version of Skype for Business and Teams still happen? Can we have an hybrid scenario of Skype for Business and Teams? Is this possible?
Sure. So, Microsoft have publicly announced that Skype for Business will be phased out from April 21, I think it is. So not long away. It's literally a year away, and then they'll phase it out completely. You will not be able to use it. So what we're seeing is a mad scramble at the moment of people moving from Skype to Teams. So what is the difference? So Teams, I've explained, it's the online collaboration and communication tool that is within Office 365 and Microsoft 365. Skype is a dedicated telephony and collaboration, calling communication tool with very little file structure behind it. And it's not the same thing at all. So you might be making a phone call using Skype for Business. You've got presence in the top right hand corner. You can see if someone's available online or that are available, but it's nothing compared to what Teams is doing. Teams has taken all the good things from Skype and then added so much more. And it's getting all of the development time at Microsoft. It's not, there's no development, and I mean this, no development at all going into Skype. So start your plan now if you've not already moved, to Teams. Teams is established now. It's certainly going from strength to strength, and there's a lot happening, whereas there's not a lot happening in Skype. So if you can look at the roadmap, look at the migration. You're not, if you've got a company that's still got Skype for Business, on premises, then you're not the first and you won't be the last to move to Teams. So there's a lot of good information out there to help you migrate across. But there's no compelling reason. There's no real reason why you wouldn't want to move ultimately to Teams. There might be some short-term issues that you would like that are not there yet in Teams, but they're coming. And they'll certainly be there before the end of the year.
Okay, and a quick one as well. Is there an on-premises version of Teams?
No, there isn't. It's completely online only. That was a short, simple answer. It's an Office 365 product, therefore it's only online.
Okay. How about the issue of the subscription now? There are many Microsoft 365 subscription plans now. Does Microsoft Teams, does it come with all of the Microsoft 365 subscription plans? And for those without the Microsoft 365 or Office 365 subscriptions, can they get a feel of Teams for free? Is this something they can as well use for free?
Okay, so good question. So Microsoft Teams is available as a free client, as a standalone client that you can use online or you can download. It is bundled as part of your Office 365 subscriptions and also as part of the Microsoft 365 subscriptions. And just remember the Office 365 is your Office 365 apps. So things like Office Online and Office 365 Pro Plus, which is the one that you install, and also the planner and the bookings and all the other online services, including Teams. With the Microsoft 365, you're getting all of that plus Windows 10 plus the enterprise mobility and security, the security part of running a business. So yes, all of those come with Teams. The simplest way to access it is literally to fire up a demo tenant. So if Microsoft partners can do that, they can access a tenant for 90 days, fully configured, and they can use that and experience that. If you're not a Microsoft partner, then you can use a free trial. So you can sign up for Office 365 and sign up for a 30-day trial and install that and use that completely. Sign up using an email address. That would give you the tools you need. If you're a student and you just want to use it, if your college has got Office 365, then you can use Teams there. And there's an education version which has got separate features for educators and students and marking of class materials that only the F licenses or the educational licenses have, which is quite cool. That's quite fun.
Okay. Another question for you, Andrew, is this, we've talked about intranet, and in the past, it used to be that we build everything around the intranet. Let's use SharePoint as an example now. So all of our line of business application, when we try to automate processes, we build them around the portal where everything can be accessed from that SharePoint landing page. But there seems to be this transition now. That is now being replaced with Teams. Everybody now spend most of their time in Teams. So can organization intranet, I want to ask, can it be extended now into Teams? Those who have a fully fledged, fully functional SharePoint, portal, SharePoint intranet. Is there a way they can extend that into Teams?
So the short answer is yes. So let's just be clear. So Teams is the go-to place now. That is going to be the number one place that your users will have open, or minimized. At least it's running on their PC. They will do their emails, they'll do the spreadsheets, they'll do all their work, whatever they're doing. But in the background will be Teams. So that means that they'll get the reminders, they'll get their invitations to meetings, they'll get people calling them, they'll get chat, they'll get all the information happening live within Teams whilst they're doing their normal work. The intranet, which is held in SharePoint Online, is your company source information. That could be live information, so it could be updated spreadsheets, it could be standing data, which could be your company handbook, it could be a price list, or it could be information about operations, and that sits in a SharePoint Online website. You can pull, or you can point within Teams. You can create tabs at the top. Now you get a files tab, you get a OneNote tab, but you can create multiple tabs on any team. So let's assume if we were going to do this on a regular basis, Kazim, we'd have a files tab, we'd have a OneNote, which might be the playbook or the workbook of what happens, how we do these things. But then you might have another tab, which is a link to the SharePoint intranet, and all that is it'll redirect the user to see the SharePoint site within Teams. It doesn't open up a browser; it opens it up within the Teams window. So they can see what they need, and they can quickly go back and forth to what they were doing before, or they can use the menu on the left-hand side to go to calendars and Teams and activity and such like. So it's almost like a viewer to the SharePoint Online intranet. So that's how you pull it into Teams.
Okay. Thank you very much, Andrew. Then let me ask you this, Andrew. What are your two favorite Microsoft Teams tools, and why do you love using them?
Oh man, you really stumped me with this one. I was like, well, interestingly, what I love is the blurred background.
Okay.
You can see the one. Look, if I show you, if I show you my real background.
Real
I'm not gonna show,
background. Yeah.
this is where I am today. This is my office. This is my office at home. But the
Okay.
backgrounds are fantastic.
Yeah.
So look, I can be more professional. I can sit on the beach. And it just changes the atmosphere straight away.
Okay.
So I think that's definitely my number one thing.
Okay.
The other thing that I really like is to be able to make announcements within a team. So you can announce something, you can make a big story. So rather than just using the general chat to be an updating, where you can say at team, this is news, this is some news I want you all to read. You can make a big splash out of that. You can highlight it, you can put an image behind it, you can make the font massive, and you can use the at team and the name of the team, and everybody on your team will be notified of that. So that's, one of the frustrations I have, so there's good things and bad things, is how do you easily email everybody in a team? Well, you should use the Office 365 groups. That should be part of a team. But if somebody created a team without doing that, it then becomes difficult. So the easiest way to make everyone aware of a notification or a message is to use the at symbol and then the name of the team, and everyone gets informed of that. And they don't get an email. They literally get it in the top left-hand corner in the activity. So they're my two things. If I'm allowed three, it would be the search. The search is pretty good. That'll search through all of the information that's in that team, in that group, but it'll also search through any video recording. So like our recording, we're recording this, so you can use the search feature, and it'll search for all the words that we've used, and it'll automatically transcribe it for you as well. So that's pretty clever.
Okay. So you can see I'm trying to look like you right now. So I've I've adopted.
Oh, you've changed your background.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. One last question for you, Andrew, before I allow those listening in to ask you one or two questions. We've got people listening right now to you, and so for those of them who are interested in learning more about Microsoft Teams and SharePoint, so what would be your advice to them, and what resources would you want to recommend?
So Microsoft Learn, so docs.microsoft.com, or search for Microsoft Learn, is where all of the current live up-to-date information on Microsoft products is stored. That is, if you want the latest, you want to know how to onboard yourself, want to board your staff, I'd go to Microsoft Learn. That's number one place. Obviously, if you prefer someone talking to you, then go to my LinkedIn Learning website, where I've recorded a bunch of courses on Office 365, SharePoint Online, and Teams. That's, and you can sign up for a 30-day trial and access that content
for free.
Yeah, you use an email account, throw away an email account and just sign up for 30-day trial and get that teaching, get that learning and teaching going on, consume it, and then and then put it into practice. Actually sign up for a trial yourself if you can. A trial is good.
Okay. So I'm going to open up the floor now for those who have questions for you, so some of those people online listening to us right now. So if you have questions for Andrew Bettany, so you can please ask your question now. So I think time will only permit us to answer for Andrew to be able to answer one or two questions. So is there anyone with questions, guys?
Hi, Andrew.
Hi.
Before today, my understanding of the
internet. Do you want to do a quick introduction? Your name?
Yeah, hi, Andrew. My name is Oida. I work with Kazim at 18IT. So before today, my understanding of the internet versus the intranet was the internet was more public, while the intranet is more inside, like within the organization, right?
Correct, yeah.
So are we saying today now that we can implement the things that are stored on the intranet from wherever they've been and bring them onto Teams as we migrate?
So everything in your intranet is internal, or maybe for your suppliers where you give them an access to it. That stays the same. So your intranet has not changed at all. What we're saying is if you take on Teams, who is that team for? You know, if that's internal only, then only
Yeah.
internal people can see the resources within that team and within SharePoint. If you add guest access to that team, then those guests will also see your SharePoint, and that could include your intranet. So you've got to be very careful when you invite guests.
Right. So basically, if I invite a person onto my Teams and I give them access, then they get access to my SharePoint also.
They get access to the SharePoint resources that team has within itself. So there'll be a document library created behind every team, and therefore anybody who's got a membership or owner or guest of that one team will see all of that SharePoint behind the scenes as well. They won't see the big, they won't see the whole SharePoint. They'll just see that one SharePoint library that was made available through that one team.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Andrew.
My pleasure.
Okay. Yeah. So is there a question from anyone else?
Thank you, Mr. Andrew. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Abdul.
Yeah. My name is Abdul Qadri. So quickly, I want to ask a question. So a licensed Microsoft Office 365 product, how many years will it take to expire, or is it live something? So, and secondly, how did you change the background?
Good question. Can you ask the first question again? I didn't really get that.
Okay, I think I got him. He wants to know, once you get an Office 365 subscription,
Yeah.
how long does it last for? It's for how long? Subscription of O365 or Microsoft 365 is for how long? Or is it for life once you get the
No,
subscription?
I'm afraid not. I'm afraid these subscriptions are like a telephone contract. You will only have your cell phone, contract for as long as you keep paying the cell phone contract. So you normally buy an annual subscription and then pay then monthly after that. So yeah, Office 365 subscriptions are very much like a cell phone subscription. They're monthly or annual. Whereas if you only wanted Office, for example, Office 2019, you can still buy a single license that's good for for as long as you own the product. But we seem to be moving towards a subscription-based model. Does that answer that question, Abdul?
Is your question answered, Abdul Qadri?
Okay, so the second question that they asked was, how do I change the background? Now, that is a feature that's been rolled out to all members in April, so some members might not have that yet. How do you change and you get, I think there's two waves. The first wave is like 6 or 7 backgrounds you can have, and I only saw today there's another 10 backgrounds that came available as well. You can also, there's a folder within your app data folder where you can upload your own pictures, and that's what I've done with this picture behind me. I've uploaded a picture I took in the States a couple of months ago, and I'm not a member of your team, but I can certainly email Kazim the instructions on how to do that.
Okay. Thank you. So I think we can manage to squeeze in just one more question. So just one last question before, I let Andrew go.
Hello, Andrew.
Hi, Paul.
Hello, Andrew. Yeah, my name is Paul. I want to ask a quick question, and it's on Microsoft Teams. Okay, so on the adoption of Microsoft Teams, here in this part of the world, people really love using SharePoint, but because of the a lot of products being rolled out by Microsoft, it becomes a little bit more confusing for people to adopt or to use other products, especially let's say Teams, for instance. Telling them to extend SharePoint to Teams. So, what are those guides one can use to give to customers or partners for Microsoft Teams? Because when we tell them Microsoft Teams is okay, is fine, their scare is by next year, Microsoft could also come up with another product that is much more better than Microsoft Teams?
Okay, that's a great question. It really is. Thank you for that, Paul. So 5 years ago, 10 years ago, we were all told that Microsoft Azure was going to be the best thing ever, and it has been. That is their biggest. That is Microsoft's biggest stake at the moment. They're putting all their effort into making Azure a joint partner with AWS, so that they're both neck and neck in the cloud computing. With Microsoft Teams, it's been the fastest growing or fastest adopted application in the last 2 years, by far. It is driving. So with the COVID-19 situation, there's more developers working on Teams than any other Office 365 tool, because they're hearing what people want is they want 9 videos, 9 tiles on the dashboard, not 4. They want more functionality that maybe Zoom has, or other tools have, Blue Jeans and others. So there's more people pushing Teams to be better than it even is now. So that level of extra support and extra activity will make the product better. The question you said about, well, look, SharePoint, SharePoint is SharePoint. It's been around for 20 years. Personally, I thought it was going to die 5 years ago. I really did. I did not see a lifeline for SharePoint. And I know a lot of people in your country use SharePoint, but across the world, SharePoint has seen a resurgence. It's become popular again. It's really well adopted again, and that is because of Office 365, and because people are using Teams, and behind Teams there's SharePoint. That's where the storage is. The file storage is stored in SharePoint. So I don't think Teams is disappearing at all. I really don't. So if you're a partner, and one of the goals for partners is not just to sell product, it's to sell what's called consumption, which is how many people are using Teams every month, how many people are using SharePoint every month, or Exchange, or Windows 10. The quickest way to drive all of those usages is by adopting Teams, because, like I said before, my Teams is open. It's minimized, but it's open all the time that my computer's on. It's after this call, I will move on to Outlook, or I'll move on to Word, but Teams is still sat there in the background. So your adoption and your usage will go sky high. And as a partner, you'll get your bonuses, your metrics, your consumption bonuses for that. And it will also drive usage of SharePoint. And you've really got to think: is there a reason for having SharePoint on site, as opposed to I've not seen anybody deploy a SharePoint server farm for 5 years, Paul. It's not happening. Whereas Microsoft in their data centers, they can do it within seconds. Whereas for you and me, it would take us a day or two. So SharePoint still has life. I think Teams has got a lot more life. And Teams needs to be where, if you're not using it within your organization, and very few partners actually do use the tools that they sell. If you're not using it in your partnership, then you should, because it can change your world. Do it. What do you think?
All right. Thank you so much, Andrew. It is so nice to have you on the show with me this afternoon. I'm afraid, I can't squeeze in any further question. Our time is fast spent now. So thank you for joining me this afternoon on the Tech Talk Show. So let's try to continue this on, the social media. And it's a wrap today on the Tech Talk Show with Kazim. So we'll do this again next week. Bye-bye.